Oh, right.
Hi everybody, I'm the Unconventional Expositor, and it's my job to sit in a chair and talk about stuff. And what better day than today? I mean, I'm under house arrest for 99 years, 5 months, 2 weeks, 6 days, 19 hours, 45 minutes, and 20 seconds for stealing a balloon I was going to pay for anyway, so I don't really have anything else to do.
And today I'm talking about Star Wars, my favorite franchise of all time. There's a lot to love about Star Wars. Space battles, space wizards, space ships, space planets, space cantinas, space cows, space teddy bears, blue milk, Darth Jar Jar Binks. But today we're gonna go back into the past, to a time when the franchise was a bit more simple, and all there was a movie released in 1977. A movie called Star Wars. I get that it's now titled Star Wars Registered Trademark, Episode 4, A New Hope Trademark, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just calling it by its original name, so get used to it. There was a man, you might have heard of him, named George Lucas, who after the success of his film American Graffiti, was looking for ideas for his next big movie. He took inspiration from the Flash Gordon serials, as well as the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, Akira Kurosawa, and plenty more, to see for yourself here. After going through numerous rough drafts, one of which featuring Darth Vader not being scared to show his face, they say that is only weakness. The movie we all know and love made its way to the silver screen, and it ended up being more successful than all George could have ever imagined. Breaking box office records, impressing critics and audiences, and winning plentiful awards and accolades in just about every single category, and of course spawning 2 sequels and later a multi-billion-dollar franchise consisting of several TV shows, a prequel trilogy, countless novels and video games, and at least 1,000 Mount Everests of merchandise.
But is the original Star Wars as good as we all remember? Before we answer that, I'd like to tell you about my first experience with Star Wars.
Back when I was in kindergarten, I was a big fan of Angry Birds. I was a simple young man, so when I heard the news of a new Angry Birds game, I got excited enough to jump to the moon and back. This new game was Angry Birds Star Wars, which was an absolute blast for 6-year-old me to play, and sure enough, I got around to watching the movies and absolutely fell in love with the trilogy. As someone who was into astronomy, I was a perfect target demographic for these movies. One of the main reasons why Star Wars became so successful would have to be its universal appeal. It had a story simple enough for kids to comprehend, while having deeper subtext like concepts of morality and parallels to our world for older audiences to pick up.
But for George Lucas' sake, this ain't the story of my life, this is a review/retrospective.
Right from the get-go, the movie tells us all we need to know about what's going on a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. With an opening crawl. I won't summarize it word for word, but all you need to know is that a group of rebels fighting against the Galactic Empire have acquired intel that can help blow up the Empire's planet-destroying base, the Death Star. In other words, guys with egg-shaped helmets, good. Guys with white armor that looks like it's made out of plastic, bad. Scary guy in black armor who likes to choke people, who breathes like 30 straws are stuck up his mouth and nostrils, also bad. You probably know who this guy is, but if you've been living like a hermit for the past 46 years, that guy's name is Darth Vader. He's a Sith Lord who serves an Emperor who could really use some skin clean. On board this tiny rebel ship are 2 droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, who are pretty much main characters for the first 20 minutes, and Princess Leia, who entrusts the 2 droids with the Death Star data. Leia is captured while 3PO and R2 elude the Empire's grasp via escape pod. They both crash onto the desert planet of Tatooine. This intro shows us just how bleak the situation really is, with the rebels being ridiculously underpowered against the imposing threat of the Empire, and it's also established Darth Vader as one of the most iconic villains of all time. Now we meet the real main character of the movie, Luke Skywalker. He's just your average Tatooine farm boy who lives with his aunt and uncle, but he's unknowingly the son of famed Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker. After his uncle purchases 3PO and R2 from some Jawas, he learns that he's the main character of this movie after R2 plays a message from Leia. Luke soon meets his father's master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who reveals he was also the master of former Jedi, now Sith Lord Darth Vader. He introduces Luke to the lightsaber, an elegant weapon for a more civilized age, before the dark times, before the Empire. Obi-Wan wants Luke to join him in fighting the bad guys with plastic suits, but Luke's like, nah, I don't want to fight, I want to go home and play with my Star Wars Legos. But when he gets home, it turns out the Empire already paid the place to visit, and Luke immediately changes his mind about partaking in the Star War. Get it? And their only ticket off the Sahara Desert planet is Han. I have a bad feeling about this Solo, a quippy smuggler with a tough guy attitude, who owns a Millennium Falcon, the fastest ship in the Outer Rim. He has a Wookiee friend named Chewbacca, who looks like a man who never shaved once in his lifetime. And the group goes off on a quest to rescue Leia from the Empire and find a way to destroy the giant disco ball in space. But first they must travel to Leia's home planet, Alderaan, to bring the Death Star plans to the rebels, cause destroying said disco ball ain't no one-man job.
As you can probably tell, this setup isn't the most original ever, but it's only execution of this rather simple premise that makes it work.
With strong acting, fun characters, a memorable score from the master himself, John Williams, nail-biting action set pieces, and Porkins. Star Wars character names are stupid, but I love them anyway. As a kid, what really drew me into Star Wars were three things: the visuals, the world building, and the characters. The visuals are a bit dated today, the movie's a product of its time after all, but for the time, the visuals look absolutely groundbreaking. The griminess of the environments made them feel more practical, like the Dune Sea actually looks like a desert, and even the aliens look real, like this actually looks like some bug-eyed bounty hunter. The original movies used CGI, but only when it was necessary, at least until the special editions came out. Like, whose idea was it to add unnecessary, immersion-breaking CGI in a practical environment? Oh right. And I am physically incapable of making this video without talking about the Star Wars galaxy itself. The fact that we only saw little bits of the galaxy made us want to see more of it. After leaving the theater, audiences had some questions. What were the Clone Wars? Who were the clones? How did the Empire take over the galaxy? How did Darth Vader fall to the dark side? Nobody knew the answers until decades after the movie's release. This film's approach to world building had the perfect ingredients for franchise potential. But what hooked me and millions of others the most was a memorable cast of characters. There's Luke, who starts off a bit unmannerly, but grows as a person throughout the story. There's Obi-Wan, who's like the wise old mentor you see in fantasy stories, only this time he's kinda sorta indirectly responsible for everything horrible going on in the galaxy, but we'll get to that another time. 3PO and R2, while still important to the mission, provide most of the film's comedy. They're quick to argue with one another, but they always end up being useful, like when they work together to save everyone from the trash compactor on the Death Star. Han Solo starts off as a guy in it for the credits, but he ends up changing from that to a genuine hero by the end of the film. Chewbacca doesn't do much, but I've always liked that there's no subtitles for what he's saying, leaving it up to the viewer's imagination to think of what he's spitting out. As you'd expect, Princess Leia is a story's damsel in distress, but she's capable of fending for herself. Like in Mario, you don't see Princess Peach blasting Goombas and Koopas into oblivion. And this movie also has some villains, Grand Moff Tarkin and Darth Vader. Tarkin is the man behind the Death Star. It's ironic that even though Vader is usually considered second in power only to the Emperor, Tarkin is always bossing him around. Also, he destroys Alderaan with the Death Star's laser cannon 0 BBY before the good guys can reach it because he thought it would be funny. It'll never not be funny that George Lucas made Tarkin an intimidating villain, while Peter Cushing was wearing slippers while playing the character. He's not the deepest villain ever, but he serves his purpose as a villain you love to hate. On the other hand, I love Darth Vader. He's terrifying enough for the characters and audience to take him seriously, as long as you don't listen to his unedited voice.
This ship carries the crest of Alderaan. Was there any of the royal family on board? Who were you carrying?
While also being mysterious enough for the audience to want to know more about him.
Now, before covering the rest of the plot, I gotta go over the special editions. Now, I'm not the biggest special edition hater on God's green earth. I consider the changes to be more hit or miss. First, I'll go over some of the good changes.
Like, there's this one scene on the Death Star in which Han Solo is chasing down some stormtroopers who can't shoot a gun for the life of them, but then he runs into a couple more stormtroopers who aren't afraid to pull the trigger. While in the special edition, Han runs into a whole army of stormtroopers. Shortly after, Han and Chewie... screw it, I'll just show you.
Close the blast doors. Open the blast door.
These scenes are what you call funny, which according to thesource.com is a synonym of absurd, amusing, droll, entertaining, hilarious, ludicrous, playful, ridiculous, silly, and whimsical. Why are they funny? Well, they have a build-up and subvert not only the audience's expectations, but the characters' expectations too. Later in the film, there's this one added scene on the Rebel base on Yavin 4 when Luke meets Biggs, a childhood friend of his. I bet whenever anyone watches this scene for the first time, they're like, oh yeah, this guy's definitely gonna die. And they'd be right. Now that we know Biggs, we want to see him live, even though we know that like tax season, Biggs' death is inevitable. My verdict, good change. And some minor visual updates were made, like making the lightsabers more colorful, and adding a ring effect to any big explosions, which I don't mind. What I do mind is some of the alterations made to Tatooine. In the special editions, George Lucas added in some aliens, robots, and animals to some scenes. The title of my video file pretty much explains my thoughts on how these changes have aged. I get what Lucas was going for. He wanted to make the Star Wars galaxy feel more alive and immersive, but it kinda had the opposite effect. These additions just look fake and break immersion. Originally, Lucas intended to add a scene shortly before the team leaves Mos Eisley, in which Han Solo meets crime lord Jabba the Hutt. He even filmed it, having a human stand-in actor whom he planned to replace using stop motion, but the scene was cut due to budget and time constraints. In the 20th anniversary re-release, he thought it would be a great idea to add that scene in, replacing the actor with more CGI that has aged poorly, because poorly aged CGI is his middle name. Though I will say, it's cool to see Boba Fett stare directly into the viewer's soul, so all's excused. The 2004 re-release further edited the scene to make Jabba look more in line with his appearance in Return of the Jedi, and it's still not great, but it's definitely an improvement over the last. Now, it's time to talk about what is undeniably the most infamous of these special changes. Han shot first. If you say those 3 words consecutively to the face of any Star Wars fan, they're gonna heat up like motor oil on fire. In the Mos Eisley Cantina scene, Han is cornered by a Rodian bounty hunter named Greedo. In the original cut, Greedo pulls out a pistol, but Han shoots first. In the 1997 re-release, the scene was edited so Greedo shoots first, but Greedo's suffering from a case of Stormtrooper Amitis and misses by a country mile. And in the 2004 re-release, they shoot at the same time, but Han suddenly receives a blessing from the Star Wars god so he can make split millisecond reactions, dodges the shot, and then shoots back. Understandably, these changes were met with heavy backlash for reasons I shouldn't need to explain, but Lucas has defended them. He wanted to make Han a good role model so kids could look up to him, but he was already setting a good example. If some lunatic's pointing a gun at you, you're gonna have to shoot first! Was George on death sticks?
Alright, enough calmly discussing those mistakes, it's time to cover the rest of the plot.
After Alderaan is destroyed, the Death Star pulls the Millennium Falcon with a tractor beam. Their solution? Take some stormtrooper suits and blend in with the crowd. Han and Luke rescue Leia as Obi-Wan shuts down the tractor beam. Then, while Obi-Wan is on his daily stroll, he comes across Darth Vader. The two get into an argument over who has the right to stroll through this specific hallway, and they agree to settle it with a climactic confrontation of good and evil, the Battle of the Ages, featuring 2 old men standing in one place while gently poking at each other with sticks that can kill people until one of them decides to perform a Mortal Kombat finisher on the other guy. But it was all part of the plan, because Luke suddenly starts hearing Obi-Wan's voice, thus proving the Force was never a bunch of bantha crap. It's real after all! The team make a speedy getaway on the Falcon and make it to the Rebel base on Yavin 4. The Rebels look at the plans and find out that the Death Star's weakness is its exhaust vent. Does this mean it has a digestive system? While Luke's on board to teach Gandalf Tarkin a lesson, Han wants to go home and spend the credits he's earned to purchase a luxury yacht and a lifetime supply of blue milk. Luke gets ready to set off with the other rebels to destroy the big grey bowling ball, which itself, in the edition I watched for this video, is approaching the Rebel base. And almost as soon as they arrive, the population of rebels who are less than a mile from the Death Star almost goes out like the dodo, being shot down by the Death Star's turrets and a squadron of TIE fighters led by Darth Vader. But off screen, Han finds out that the yacht and blue milk he wanted was purchased by Jabba the Hutt. No wonder he's so fat. So he decides that he's got nothing better to do than help out Luke and blast Vader off course into the desolate reaches of space. Then, Luke receives some words of wisdom from Sir Alec Guinness's voice.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go. Luke, trust me.
10 out of 10. Best advice ever. And he fires the finishing blow, thus ending the Star War. Except it didn't, because George had to make this a trilogy.
So, how does Star Wars, aka Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, hold up today? Well, if you ask me, pretty damn well.
The only negatives I can think of would have to be that the ending does feel a bit abrupt, and that the stormtroopers aim like they just drank 50 bottles of lager.
Despite these nitpicks, it's still a cinematic gem. My recommendation is to add it to your collection, which I might as well do right now.
You mother!
Well, this sucks. As part of my punishment for stealing a balloon, my whole library has been confiscated from me. All those years, spending all that money for nothing. But this was all part of my plan. I wanted to be placed under unreasonably long house arrest and have my collection taken and burned, for popping the balloon of course, so I had an excuse to do nothing but make these reviews. In other words, you can expect more of these videos from me. Join me on this quest, viewer, as I fill my collection back up with things I review. Wait, do I smell? Oh, I left the oven on!
Hello everybody! I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I'm planning to make more of these reviews in the future, and I'll be reviewing more than just movies, but also TV shows and video games, or just whatever interests me. So I'll see you next time.